Sidekicks, the weekly cybersecurity podcast hosted by Richmond Advisory Group's principal analyst, that's namely me, Rory Duncan, and her, Christina Richmond. This podcast is your go-to partner for understanding the cybersecurity market, industry trends, and the real-world challenges of protecting organizations today. Hello, Christina. Sorry you're not feeling 100%.
Thank you. I'm not 100%, and thank you for doing that and letting me have a giggle. I'm just back from California, where I spent a few lovely days with Lumen, as you know, and caught a little bit of a bug. I'm okay. I'm excited to be here, but I'm just a little south when it comes to the energy. So thank you, Rory, for stepping in.
Yeah.
So what do we have on the lineup today?
Well, we have a bunch of different things. We'll be chatting with this week's guest, who is Kyle Wickert, who's the field CTO at AlgoSec. So we'll be chatting with him about a bunch of different things, probably AI, it usually comes into the conversation, but also topics like policy management across applications, cloud, etc. So Kyle will be on later on.
Wonderful. I look forward to that discussion.
Great. So Christina, tell us a little bit about the Lumen Analyst Summit you went to.
Well, you know, I will be honest and say I expected to be bored. Because I'm not a network analyst. Yes, I think it's slightly interesting to understand the shifts from whatever IPv to the next IPv, or to understand the different layers of cable or fabric, but not so much, really. So I expected to be bored, but I was really quite impressed, I must say. Now, I'm still a little bit in that halo, if you will, of the Kool-Aid drinking. You know, when you're an analyst and you go to these events, you kind of feel like it's so exciting because you're there and you're seeing things that you haven't seen before. And so I'm a little bit in that, halo. But let me start out with the leadership. The entire leadership team, except for one person, was there. And I can't remember why the ninth leader was not there. Let's see, the ninth leader, I think, was Wes Gibson, and he couldn't make it, and he was off doing something important, according to their CEO. But, for those who haven't been watching Lumen, they were struggling quite a bit. Many people had written them off. They were really struggling financially. And they didn't have a clear mission or vision. So they changed their leadership team 3 years ago. And when I say change the leadership team, I mean every single one of them.
Wow.
Which is stunning.
Gosh.
So Kate Johnson, president and CEO, she is extremely impressive. She spoke first. So the leaders who were there, Kate Johnson, Chris Stansbury, Ashley Haynes-Gaspar, Dave Ward, Anna White, Kai Prigg, Ryan Asdurian, and Mark Hacker, I think, were all there. So 8 of the 9 leaders were there. They were all new and very cohesive in their messaging, very cohesive in their support of the mission. So that's the next thing that I want to talk about. Well, actually, I'll go to finances first. They were extremely transparent on their financing. They showed the good, they showed the bad, they showed the very ugly, and they showed how they are turning the Titanic, if you will, from 2022 till today and beyond. They showed how they are shifting the EBITDA so that they will have positive growth in 2026. Some of that was selling off their consumer fiber to AT&T. That's expected to close in 2026. So that's a big cash back to them. They show the revenue mix of legacy that is declining, which it's declining for all telcos, and where their strategic vision is the positive. So there's this dichotomy, this split in their chart, showing how they're, yes, still selling what's legacy, but they are also accelerating the growth, assets that they have. So, proof and pudding and all that. And I posted on LinkedIn that, wait and see. The big bets that they're making are shift to cloud 2.0. And I'll say more about that in a second. And the reason for cloud 2.0 is because of AI.
Right.
So the Cloud 2.0, they say, demands a network reset. AI is redefining the data center footprint that is growing 10x from 2025 to handle exabyte scale demand. Now, do we know for sure that AI really is a thing? We think it's a thing, right? It is growing really rapidly. It has been called a bit of a bubble. Maybe it will kind of plateau a bit. So we don't know, but that's one of their big bets. Legacy networks were designed for voice, internet, and VPN, not bandwidth heavy AI. So data centers weren't designed for it. Storage wasn't designed for it. Networks weren't designed for it. The Cloud 1.0 connectivity with internet overlays and carrier neutral facilities, they say, has hit its limits. So they are doing quite a build out, and they showed us pictures and a video of the build out. They have redesigned the fiber cables to be more hardy, if you will, the casing, the wrapper. They are laying, I don't even remember the numbers, but it is in the millions of miles. I don't know. I'm probably making that up. But here's the thing. Cloud 1.0 was more hub and spoke, and it was in tier 1 metros, whereas Cloud 2.0, they're saying, has to have an any-to-any fabric across many metros with distributed data center interconnects. And also it needs to be agnostic to carrier, which they're building. And then they need, instead of workloads in gigabytes, it has to be exabyte scale transfers, right? And it has to go to these public cloud direct connects. But so they showed where they have laid the pipe. They have showed how fast they're doing it. Now they're very US focused. The one chink in the armor, maybe, if there is one, and yes, there probably is, and when I settle down over the weekend, I'll probably find more. I was going to ask a question on why they're just focused on US. All they talked about was US, and why they haven't talked about global. Someone else beat me to it, and that's great, because they asked it probably better than I would have. And the answer was good, but slightly evasive. So my guess is so many carriers have done this, where they've had to focus on one strong market, and they have, sold off or partnered for more of the global. So I would say that they are really very focused on the US market. They are covering all of the US except for poor Montana and the Dakotas. When I look at their map, I'm like, what happened to Montana and the Dakotas? But it's because of density. I get it.
Okay, fair enough.
I get it. So anyway, the global question is still a question for me. I think it has to do with their cash flow and whether they can really afford to continue being, they are global, but they go through a lot of partners, I think, at this time. So I think they're going to consolidate in the US, make everyone go through them in their new fiber network if they can, and then potentially partner globally. So we'll see. Did you want to ask me something?
I was just going to say, it kind of mirrors, the kind of telco sector. I know they're different, but networking firms or network firms, telco firms, they're all kind of affected by regional factors, and even the big ones, whether it's a data center operator or network provider, whatever, they tend to be strong in certain regions and weaker elsewhere. Or to your point, they partner, or they really only focus on a certain sector. So it does vary. You can see why, if you are a network and or telco analyst, there is a lot more going on from a regional perspective in terms of, recognized companies and brands, and, that potentially may explain why Lumen is sticking with its core market where it has its strengths. But it does sound like it's kind of, I don't want to kind of patronize them by, say, catching up, but to your point, I didn't really hear much of that kind of discussion before with Lumen, having dealt with them a few years ago. It sounds as if they've got all their ducks in a row from a infrastructure and technology perspective, that's for sure.
I think they do. I was also impressed because when I see a vision, I'm like, yeah, you can put lipstick on the pig, but show me how you're raising the pig, taking care of the pig, how are, once you slaughter it, is the meat any good? Oh, this is a terrible metaphor. No, but to carry through with what I really meant to say, show me where the rubber meets the road. And the rubber is meeting the road with their product management and their product marketing. And so
Mm-hmm.
Dave, I'm going to butcher his name, sorry, Dave Shakochis, I think
Mm-hmm.
is how you say it. Dave Shakochis came out. He's the head of product management, I believe, or
Mm-hmm.
product marketing. Again, folks, I'm just fresh off the boat here. I need to go back through all my notes. But it was a very clear product marketing story. Through
Mm-hmm.
there, everyone spoke the same words about the three core pillars: the physical network, the digital platform, the connected ecosystem. They are way down the path with ecosystem partners. So that's another piece of it. So I was
Hmm.
impressed with that. The other piece that I was really impressed with is you often hear about cultural shift, and I don't believe it, and
Mm-hmm.
you see where it fails in the people who are unhappy. And because we all have friends, we've all been talking to the marketers and the analyst relations and the product management folks, along the way, we find out when that culture breaks down. Everyone I talked to said it's real. They have this sort of life cycle figure eight that is the culture map, where they talk about, things that all of us would love to have on our culture roadmap, teamwork, trust, transparency, clarity, customer obsession, courage, growth mindset, and respect. But they talked pretty deeply about each one of those, and the chief people officer gave examples, talked about where they've instituted systems and processes that support those systems. And then when I was doing my own little field research with the people I know at Lumen, they were like, yeah, I was ready to walk. And I stayed. And I'm really
Oh,
glad I stayed because it really is shifting.
well,
So,
that's good.
yeah,
That's good to
yeah,
know.
yeah.
Great. Well,
So, I
thanks.
mean,
Thanks for that,
you're
Christina.
you're welcome. I was really impressed. We'll see what happens as I unpack all the notes. I can give a little bit of an update next week as well.
So this week's special guest is Kyle Wickert, Field CTO at AlgoSec. Welcome, Kyle. Thanks for being on the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me this morning.
Great, excellent. Now, we've not talked directly before, but I think you've had a discussion with Christina in the past. Do you want to just let us know a little bit about what you do, and then we'll have a bit more of a detailed chat?
Yeah, of course. So, Kyle Wickert, been at AlgoSec 13 years. Prior to that, I was actually with one of the large Canadian banks up here in Toronto, where I'm based out of. When I joined AlgoSec, I was really a regional solution engineer working day to day with customers, and I still very much work day to day with customers in my role as our field CTO. But I work globally now with a lot of our large and strategic customers, both pre and post sale, solutioning the products that we deliver, really focused on shortening the time to deliver connectivity for their businesses and
Hmm.
optimizing the processes and capabilities around that.
Okay. So thanks for that, and it kind of leads into the first question we usually ask folk, which is, given you have a field role, you're dealing with customers all the
Yeah.
time, you're dealing with lots of projects and challenges and whatever. What keeps you up at night? What is generally on your mind?
Well, we joked before we hit record, but my 10-month-old at the moment. But no,
Eek.
I'm kidding.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to what I hear day to day with the customers that I'm working with, a lot of what keeps me up at night is really two things mainly. Just the shocking complexity that we find customers having to deal with in terms of multi-vendor environments, connectivity needs that are spanning across a variety of different enforcement and technologies, and the process that needs to be put in place to not only secure that, but secure it in a way that can keep up with the business.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly something that we've heard reflected from other guests. Where do you find the kind of the biggest pressures coming from? How have you seen it changing over the last few years?
So the businesses are only moving faster. At the end of the day, what I find personally, is that whether you're IT, financial, manufacturing, retail, you're all having to be IT businesses, in the sense that the services, the functions you're delivering to your customers are all being digitized aggressively through applications, whether those are mobile applications, web-based applications, and now even AI-based interactions of different types. And so the business is just putting a tremendous amount of pressure on IT to make things communicate end to end, often in ways they weren't previously, to take advantage of some of the latest and greatest tech that's out there.
So previously, as in the expectations have changed as to, is it accountability, profitability, return on investment, or what are the things that have changed, the expectations?
All of the above and what you just mentioned, but at the end of the day, it's really the business's expectation that the time to market for a lot of these new services needs to be weeks and days, not
Right.
months and years. And it just squeezes all the different things that need to come together much, much faster to deliver these apps. And obviously, in our world, we're really focused on connectivity and the enforcement that comes with that. There's a lot of other things going on, but
Yeah.
you'd be surprised. A lot of the folks we talk to are still delivering connectivity using, frankly, some archaic processes. You'd be very surprised.
Yeah, no, I can fully understand that. I know as the technology vendors and some of the the largest service providers do promise instantaneous or real time 24/7 services, that the ease of spinning up services and scaling things. So the expectations from customers are generally quite high if they look and listen to the announcements that the vendors make. And I guess for you guys, that doesn't necessarily help. How do you find then, from a security perspective, things have changed? So specifically in that area, because we've seen this expectation for more and quicker, and then more and quicker and better value, and so on. How is this impacting your experience of the security risk and posture for companies?
Yeah, so it's a struggle for them to keep up in a sense. It's really a lot of policy drift, frankly, and a lot of shadow IT. So when I mention policy drift, what I'm thinking of is you've got an organization that's got different IT teams working in the cloud, inside the data center, and then even within the data centers that remain. As you move more and more infrastructure to the cloud, you've got private cloud infrastructure. All of these are often working in different silos with different technologies at different speeds. I just got back from the UK a couple of weeks ago. I was visiting with a few of our large customers there, and it was exactly that, right? You've got OpenShift here, you've got AWS and Azure there, and of course traditional firewalling going on in the data center. All of these environments look completely different, and they're diverging in terms of how they're being managed, enforcement, the macro or micro level of enforcement. And so unifying that in some sense, maybe not completely, but in some sense, is really, really important for a consistent security posture. That's the operational risk that gets created as these
So,
environments and these technologies diverge.
so you're building, you're deploying SD-WAN and architecture across any of the different connectivity platforms, hyperscalers, wherever you can with the WAN, and setting policy with all of that. So I'm curious. First of all, is that correct? Am I right about that?
Yeah, so we really focus on the security policy on specific enforcement technologies within
Mm-hmm.
those bits. So if we think
I
about
see.
AWS, Azure, GCP, we're talking about the cloud NSGs, the cloud native firewalling. Funny
Mm-hmm.
enough, the majority of customers I come across are using a third-party firewall, like a Palo, a Checkpoint,
Right.
a Fortinet inside of these environments as well. So you've got complexity even purely in one of these technologies, but
Right.
yeah,
Layers of complexity, as you
yeah.
said
Yeah,
earlier.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm curious, I'm just back from an event with Lumen Technologies, and they've been going through quite a transformation. But one of the things that they're talking about is Cloud 2.0 and how the current internet overlay, the current, network connectivity is not enough for the onslaught of the AI transformation that we're going through. The instead of gigabits of traffic, we're going to be seeing exabytes. And so I'm just curious, how do you see things evolving? First of all, do you agree with that premise? Do we need a cloud 2.0? Are they putting, not that you're saying yes or no, Lumen has the right bet, but I'm just curious, is this something we need to construct for, actually build out for, given the fact that we see AI on the horizon. Are you already seeing the layers of complexity break the connectivity? Are you already seeing the need for a new build? If that's something, you agree with.
Yeah, I do agree with it. I think for the most part, I think what's interesting though is even underneath any kind of cloud 2.0, some of the fundamentals are still going to need to be there in terms of
Mm,
hygiene, best practice, because you can scale up and build Cloud 2.0 in a variety of different ways, of course, using different best of breed technologies. But at the end of the day, underneath all of that, you're going to have core fundamentals like security enforcement that are going to need to be there, albeit maybe using different technologies and changing in terms of how it's done. But
right.
the process around that is really what I focus a lot on with customers. A lot of times it's about ensuring that there's a balance of speed and security. And even in Network 2.0, Network 3.0 projects I see across different ISP customers of ours globally, there's a huge desire to simply drastically improve the process of deploying these policies so that we can take the human out of the equation when it makes sense to do so, but also have the expertise there when something complex or something potentially risky needs to be introduced into the environment to support some specific business function or objective.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was
So
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, no, that's very interesting. There's a couple of things we do kind of guess need to mention, get them out of the way at least, or you might actually mention them spontaneously, Kyle. But we mentioned AI briefly there. AI agents, and we do talk a lot about that, and we will be talking about it later on the show as well. It's inevitably a discussion that comes up, having autonomous agents that are tasked with various activities, whether it's speaking with another service or interacting with another agent or whatever. How are you seeing that manifesting itself with your customers, and what kind of challenges are you seeing them having to face?
It's actually quite shocking to me how quickly this has moved. Obviously, AI itself is moving very, very quickly, but the progression now to AI agents has even surprised me quite a bit. I was again with a customer a few weeks ago here in Toronto, and they were asking us, AlgoSec, when are you going to expose an AI agent of your solution we can start integrating with our own AI agents? And that kind of caught me off guard just in terms of the pace at which people are already building on these technologies. I think inside of the customer environments that I'm familiar with and that we see all the time, I think the proliferation of these agents is going to further highlight the need for segmentation, both of the
Right.
network and the applications at large, because these things are going to start, I think, organically wanting to communicate with each other and exchange data that maybe they shouldn't. And obviously, you're going to enforce that using different security controls around authentication, authorization, and things like that. But the network will still be fundamental. I think when it comes to solutions like ourselves even, or other vendors in the market providing AI functions and agents to our customers, it's funny, the CISOs and engineers I talk with, they immediately want to know why AI made that recommendation. It's not enough to just give a recommendation, but it's really what happens when the AI gets it wrong? What do you do? How do we know it got it wrong? So they're asking all the right questions around not just blindly trusting the AI, and this is something that's going to have to be tackled as well.
That's interesting. It seems as if in a way there's a little bit more realization quicker about AI and what it means. I think if you contrast that perhaps with the early days of cloud, and say cloud 1.0, there were less kind of questions asked. There was a little bit more kind of acceptability until the point at which public cloud became something that was more people were more familiar with, and they started to realize about how much it was costing and what the alternatives were and so on.
Yeah, I think Cloud 1.0, people just saw it as another great place to run your infrastructure, another data
Exactly.
center for all intents and purposes. Now, as things are progressing, you've got all types of different PaaS functions and different new services like AI that can be much more easily consumed.
Yeah. Talk a little bit more about one of the points you brought up there, which was about segmentation, which is really interesting because this idea between the segmentation of network and then other functions, how do you see that working?
Yeah, so we talk to customers about segmentation quite a bit, and there's obviously a variety of different ways to approach this. And there's different technologies in the market that allow customers to microsegment at the workload level. AlgoSec in particular, we play and work really, really closely with a lot of technologies out there that do that type of workload level segmentation. And we actually will use their definition of what can talk to what to really give the customer options to further deploy that same enforcement at a higher level across the network, at a more macro or micro level, depending on what they want to achieve. But for us, we really drive segmentation from the application down. That's really where we focus, and we apply that predominantly to the network, and we're seeing more and more customers want to do that to protect their crown jewel applications. It's not enough to just enforce at the workload. You want to be able to have the option when it makes sense to do so, really from a defense in depth standpoint, just again, a fundamental principle to be able to apply that enforcement and granularity elsewhere in the environment. And heck, we've even seen legacy customers. When I say legacy, I mean, manufacturers, OT, where they've got gear and infrastructure that is legacy, cannot have a new technology applied to it, like an agent, to do that level of segmentation. And they need to put the enforcement at a higher level in the network, and that's where we can come in as well.
Right, okay. So I wanted to kind of ask a couple of things, because, and you mentioned that you have some customers in the UK, and I know that you've got different types of customers in many different industries, but one thing we see coming up again and again that is kind of putting pressure on, let's say, the security operations or security professionals are, let's say, compliance and regulatory requirements. Now, obviously, if you spent time in the UK and in Europe, that manifests itself in perhaps slightly different or more strict ways, some when strict, some less strict ways. How are you seeing this affecting the kind of work that you can do with your customers, and how are they dealing with that?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind when you say that, particularly relevant to Europe, is DORA. We've seen customers in all kinds of different areas come to us and need to not just get a report that they can share with somebody that says they're compliant with any kind of regulation or DORA in particularly, but say, okay, how can AlgoSec and how can you help us design a process and a solution that's going to help us to have a framework for being compliant in an ongoing manner? And the number one thing that comes to mind is clients coming to us for rule recertification. This is something, by the way, that's been around for years, right? Help us go to every single policy across our entire environment, tie an owner and an expiration, and give us a way to manage that ongoing. But what we're finding is, as customers have moved to the cloud, as they've implemented segmentation, it's not just a bunch of firewall rules anymore. It's policies on different SDN technologies. It's policies in the cloud that all need to be attested to ongoing. And if they're not relevant anymore, tidied up. But the scale is huge. It's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of policies, no longer a few thousand. So we've actually had a lot of success moving customers over to application-centric recertification, right? If I can figure out that 200 policies across a variety of different technologies support SAP, it's much easier to go to the owner of SAP and say, do you still need this connectivity? Not just mail them a spreadsheet and say, what do you think about this, right? And so huge implications there for allowing people to remain aligned to these regulatory standards and also modernize the process around it and create much better experiences for the businesses that they're serving.
So how much of that is platform-based or automated versus, as you say, spreadsheets? I know in the world of compliance and GRC, things have been evolving. I've been watching that space for a while. But specific to something like firewall rule recerts or application certs that you're using to drive some of the technology recertification that you just mentioned, how much of that is automated today?
So for us, when it comes to the application recertification, which is our best practice that we share with our customers, the entire process is automated. The attestation and the decisions around removal. So when we enter an environment, naturally we're going to connect to a customer's enforcement technologies. Again, the firewalls, the cloud, the SDN, we're going to digest that. We're going to automatically map those policies to the application intent that we understand. And we've done some very powerful things with AI actually to understand application intent. But once we do that mapping automatically, our systems will notify the application owners that there's a need to attest to the ongoing access that they have. They'll automatically be prompted to enter a business justification, and then the platform will automatically manage and track that. And it provides a really powerful way to be able to reliably go to the regulator and say, for SAP or Exchange or mobile banking or whatever the application is, we know the policies that support it, we know why they're there, and we continually and reliably are able to say that they need to be there, which is quite frankly the spirit of a lot of those regulatory standards.
I had one kind of last area to ask you about. As analysts, people are always asking us about, hey, what's coming up next? What's coming down the pipe? What's going to happen in the future? Obviously, we like to think we give good advice, but one of the reasons why we can give good advice is because we ask other folk, see what they think. So where do you think things are going, Kyle? What's going to happen next in your world? Where do you think the market is going? What do you think customers are going to be asking more of from you?
Yeah, I mean, in our specific market, and I'm sure this is applicable to a lot of others, so it won't be unique, but it's AI, more AI. But to be a little more specific around that, I think it's AI to ease a lot of the historical challenges with deployment and consumption of the technology. What do I mean? Simplifying adoption, simplifying deployment, being able to more rapidly get to value with technology like ours. And I'll give you a great example, actually. One of the introductions this year of AI into our technology is helping our customers more rapidly discover application intent. It's a huge part of AlgoSec's overall approach to how we help our customers. But what we found was customers, whether they knew it or not, were mapping their applications through years and years and years of historical change requests because they were capturing source, destination, service, and guess what? All the business justification for why that was there. And so that was one of the first areas where we said, okay, we can accelerate our customers' time to value by applying AI to that particular use case. And I'll give you a great example. I had a large European customer, about 72,000 historical change requests executed against our closed AI model, yielded about 700 or so business applications rapidly mapped in the platform. And that created a huge, more rapid jump off point for them to get to a lot of the functionality that I chatted about earlier. So
Wow.
This has been great. I really, even though we talked back in August, and I know we talked about the application centric recertification rather than going through each of the different technologies like a firewall, it made it more clear to me today, the way you described it. So in spite of your 10-month-old keeping you up the other night, I think you were really spot on, very clear, and I really appreciate you coming on and chatting with us.
That's good. I can get some external validation that I still have my wits about me. That's good.
Oh, Kyle, it doesn't last long. Don't worry. 10,
Yeah.
you're only 10 months in. Wait until you're 10 years in, and you'll be a husk. A husk
It's a whole
of your
different
former
set of
self.
problems.
Oh, listen, we could
That's
have a whole podcast just talking about that, but we won't. We'll spare you that. It will be lovely. It's a wonderful time in your life.
It's just unicorns and rainbows.
It is. And on that
Well,
note,
Kyle, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah.
This was really interesting. Not an area that we focus on all that much,
Mm.
and it's one that I really am going to spend a lot more time reviewing what's happening in this space, because I think we do need to spend a much bigger amount of time on it, Rory, especially given what I said earlier about Lumen and the Cloud 2.0. I think this is an area, SD-WAN, SASE, policy management, all of that I think is really critical for us to make sure. You may be more up on it than I am, Rory, honestly, but I think it'll be an area that will strengthen, and we'd love to have you back, Kyle, if you're willing.
I would love to come back later in the year and kind of pick up the discussion. And I can tell you, look, every large enterprise I work with, no matter how modern and cutting edge they are, is dealing with these types of challenges. And it may not be the number one problem, but it's always in the number 10 list of problems to solve, and it's key.
Great. Well, thank you again for your insights, Kyle. That's awesome. And we look forward to having you back on again. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Well, that was a great discussion with Kyle. And thanks also for your update on Lumen. And given that, we're probably running extremely long now. I think we're at, like 2.5, maybe 3 hours or something with the discussions. So
you think?
Let's just bin the news section for this week. Sorry, folk. I'll put some details in the show notes. And then we can pick things up again next week when we're all hale and hearty again.
Yeah, thank you. That's great, Rory. And I think, the ransomware stuff is really interesting, and we do need to cover it, but I don't think it's going away by next week. So stay tuned for that.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Particularly with poor old Jaguar Land Rover, it's probably going to be going on well into next month. So we shall do an update for everybody next week. And with that, I'd like to thank everybody for listening. We had a great time as usual. Please keep up with the feedback and comments and suggestions.
One thing on that, though, I just want to say, didn't we pass 1,000 downloads? I thought that was something worth mentioning, right?
Yes. Thanks for the reminder. At least with our current podcast host platform, which is Podbean, which personally I'd be very happy to recommend other people to use. That's Podbean.
Oh, nice.
On their platform, which is only about half the time we've been doing this, we've already passed 1,000 downloads. So we have our little badge, which was very good to receive. Very pleased to receive that. Yeah, what an awesome thing to receive.
We got a little badge.
A little
And the
badge.
other thing I wanted to mention before we really wrap up is that next week's guest, stay tuned for Danny Howitt. He's the technical director at SciXL. He heads their DFIR team.
Yes.
So the forensic investigation team. And he's going to be talking about DFIR and AI-fueled offensive ops. So I think that'll be really interesting.
Yeah, definitely interesting. That's one I've been looking forward to. So thanks for that. If you'd like to reach out to us, there's a couple of ways you can do that. First of all, through leaving a voice message, and you can do that through SpeakPipe. So that is www.speakpipe.com/cyber_sidekicks. 90-second voicemail max, and we'll share any that are not too spicy, insulting, and so on in the following episodes. Or you could send us an email, and you can reach us Christina@richmondadvisorygroup.com or Rory@richmondadvisorygroup.com. And with that, thank you again for listening. Look forward to you guys tuning in next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.